Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight, alongside me, I have RDV. We're going over the third film in the Dirty Harry franchise, The Enforcer, from 1975, 76-ish, or whatever.
Mhm.
All I'm going to say, my initial impressions, RDV, of The Enforcer is, wow, what a difference from the first two films to this third one. I feel like there's this big gulf. There's a lot of things to like in this film, and I think on paper or talking about it, they sound really, really good. Um, but when a guy gets his wee shot off and somebody else gets shot with a rocket launcher, those normally would be cool things. But somehow, even in a Dirty Harry film, I feel they just fall a little bit short. I don't
Right?
know why. Maybe it's because I'm supposed to feel emasculated due to the fact that this is the first movie I can recall going back in the 70s without thinking about it that involves affirmative action. And fortunately for us, we got Tyne Daly, and unfortunately for us, we got a watered down, I think, script for it because they made her look really, really weak until the very end. It was very formulaic. I just, I guess I was surprised at what the drop off of quality of what I'm used to, including the score and some other things about it. But it's watchable, and there's some great lines in here. But there's
Yeah.
just something about the way it flows that I just wasn't quite feeling it like the first two films. What about you?
Well, yeah, the main bad guys are kind of like, okay, they're kind of lacking, and the whole plot is to kidnap the mayor. They're the people's revolutionary fighters. I'm thinking, okay, that's cool. Um, Not really original, but I guess these are people who are just anarchists that hate the government. But yeah, there are good scenes in here. I mean, even his partner, like she grew on me after a while. I and he even makes fun of her a little bit. Basically he does with anybody with his other um partners.
Hmm.
Makes a fool of them. I know, when he goes in and goes to see the informant guy, the guy who runs like the I don't know, he's a Black Panther, what he's supposed to be. But anyway, yeah, he goes in
He
there.
was a militant pimp, sir,
Yeah,
or he was
so
a
he
pimp in the
he
last film.
he,
Remember,
he
he was the
leaves
guy in the pimp mobile that we
he
talked about
but
extensively.
he leaves his partner in there, his female partner, and she's pretty much over her head over there. All the guys are coming over to her and stuff, and she's telling, "I'm a police officer. You can't do this." And he comes like, "He's like, you're done socializing. We need to go back to work." And he comes down talking to the guy. I mean, yeah,
She won over the brothers, though. She did good.
yeah. Um, but yeah, but we find out a little bit more about her, and then she asks him, "Why do you carry this gun around, this big old cannon around?" He's like, "Well, it's like little 38s, they just bounce off windshields. I know this, the 44 Mag will go right through it." So she makes the line. It's all about penetration. So you're getting a little flirtation around here. It's like almost kind of like they might kind of like each other a little bit more.
To me, it totally doesn't work at all.
Well, not in the workplace,
Well, no, but
but
let's just back up a little bit and let's put this movie in its perspective. We'll start from the beginning and go through a few scenes. So this movie was, I think, 75, 76, like I said. So let's say
mhm.
76. And the movies have been very successful, made a lot of money. I think the idea of having a militant group going crazy and putting that on film is a good idea. And I like the fact that you see the porn district, whereas the last one, the cost plus market, which would become world market or vice versa,
Mhm.
now in today's world, was shot up. So we always talked about San Francisco being a great part of the movies. Here I feel like it's just the backdrop. I don't feel like they make that big of an effort.
No,
They just assume if you film it, it's going to be okay. And early on, we have at the beginning this rather slim, non-tattooed up hitchhiker young woman who gets these two cops to take her to a place, and of course it's a ruse because instead of having a little romp in the hay, they get blasted away because they're going to steal this militant group a bunch of military weapons. And unfortunately, like you said, these villains, again, they don't have to be Moonraker type level villains. They just have to be somewhat engaging, and they're really absent the whole film. There's no sense of
hmm
dread or threat or anything else, even if the mayor's involved, because we don't care about the mayor of San Francisco. We've never
no,
cared about a mayor of any city, so it really just doesn't work. And to your point, when we get the opening scene where Callahan gets to do something to show how cool he is, and so what is it this time? Well, guys kidnap somebody, and you know he wants a car with a radio and all that. So Callahan gives him that. He
There you
drives the
go.
car
Yeah.
into the thing and then blows him off. I'm like,
Yeah, a little convenience store, a little corner store. And
so
yeah,
even that scene, it was like, I
it
like the
proves
idea. Telling that to you sounds kind of badass, right? But when I'm watching it, I'm kind of like, yeah, okay. I don't know. What did you think?
Well, I thought it's proving that he's a loose cannon, and they're continuing the theme of the other two movies. That's why he got put the homicide, because he kept causing damage, property damage, all that stuff. And we see after he does this, I'm like, if he would have drove the car in there, I wouldn't. I mean, that wouldn't. That is Harry. Harry would drive the car, and he's want a car. Here's a car. It's like, and of course he gets reprimanded. He takes out homicide, now he's in personnel, and that's where he meets his partner. But like, yeah, so yeah, I did like that scene, the car scene with going crashing into. It's still cool.
I mean, it's not bad. It's not a bad scene,
No.
but it didn't make me go, "Ooh, that's really creative" or whatever. It was just like, okay, maybe because
Well,
we're so used to seeing it on TV since the
you're
mid
seeing
'70s.
now these scenes like this. You're seeing where they got for Lethal Weapon, for Riggs.
That's true. T.J. Hooker, because he likes to slide over and he busts up more cop cars than anybody probably on all the history of TV shows combined.
That was the thing, and Harry is the wild cannon. He's the guy you can't control. He's the gun that's going to put a bullet in you. So if you're a criminal in San Francisco, you're at this point, you're dumb to even try shooting. You're doing anything, because it would have been more funny. They're like, oh crap, that's Callahan. We're done. We give up. That would have been much more cooler for me, because like we're getting the third movie, so they should know who this guy is, and they're like, this guy. And as soon as they see the gun, they're like, oh my gosh.
You know what this movie should have been? It should have been Callahan being demoted from the last film. So like, say he's writing tickets or doing like security at second level sporting events for the city, right?
Yeah.
It should be that, like you say, all the people in the underground kind of know who he is, and since we know that the streets are running wild and the blood will flow on the streets of San Francisco. Well, I hated saying that phrase because that makes us think of Michael Douglas. But the point is it would be neat if all the bums and all the professional guys, if there's like 3 or 4 different ones all trying to put the hit on them, and they're all having like a fight to see if they could get Callahan first. That'd been kind of cool.
That would have been more sense, them hiring someone from out of town to come.
Show that he's got heat. Because he doesn't, I mean, and
that's
you have to overdo it in every movie after this now, right?
That's the major flaw. I mean, if these guys get done, there should be guys hiring someone else from out of town and to take out Harry. They want, because they want the control back.
Yeah.
Organized mob would have been much better. 70s, they're still so organized crime.
And the other thing too is these bad guys are. It's supposed to be just a rogue militant group. There's not a lot of efforts put into them, but this is something that, because you could talk about the political nature of what was happening in the United States in the 60s into the 70s, that this is going to be commonplace, and it has been since. So it's not like this is a one-off or just at the time. But unfortunately, what I was going to say is the one bad guy who's not the main one, he's the guy on the side. He's the one that looks like he's balding, but he's not yet. Yeah. That is Michael Cavanaugh, who we've given great props to, because he was in Forced Vengeance, where he's like, I will take you apart piece by piece. And he's on the boat beating up on Chuck Norris. Yeah. He should have been the main guy, because he's the only guy that had any sort of menace to him. All the other ones are like, really?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, your National Guard would take these guys out. We didn't need Dirty Harry to do that. It's disappointing. We should have had more Michael Cavanaugh, but I think it was one of his first films. So
the other thing that's really annoying is the fact that they don't have anybody who's got a vendetta against Harry. Like,
right?
Harry, you interrupted my thing, or you end up killing my girlfriend or something. So I'm gonna go after you, someone you care about, and kill them. So it becomes personal. That's what we want, but they don't do that. So. And I don't think they even do that in the next movie, 2 movies.
No, when we get to them, we'll discuss it. But yeah,
it just seems like these movies, though. The sequel was good. Now this is a threequel, I guess you call it. Third, and it doesn't seem as good as the second one. Even though the second one is probably, I'd still say it's on par with the first one as far as quality.
This one is entertaining because the big scene, the thing that I always remember about this film, and when you think about the films, especially if I haven't watched them in a while, is I think of Tyne Daly. And I think about her interview scene, because she's a lady that's worked in personnel like 9-10 years. And because of affirmative action, Harry's going to get a partner that's going to be a woman, and it's just a question of which one. So they bring her in there and they ask her a question, and he has some nice back and forth with the lady that's like the mayor spokesperson. And not only is that good because of some of the back and forth going through, it's a great scene, but even I think by today's standards, it feels forced. And people argue about, all the stuff that goes on in film study and the political stuff too. We usually try to stay out of it, but here it's front and center. And like I say, unfortunately, they try to force these two together. I think they both do their jobs very well. I do not buy the chemistry with them together, but I buy her as being very competent. I think she's got garbage material to work with, because let's be honest, she's introduced to force the whole feminism angle so she can then prove her competence by saving the mayor at the end, and then of course getting shot up for it. And then all Harry does basically is quote unquote avenger by taking a rocket launcher and shooting the last guy that we don't care about on Alcatraz Island while the mayor ends up kind of living. It's like this third act is such a dud. It doesn't work at all to me.
Him using the rocket launcher to blow up the guy, I thought it would have been a little more personal because the way that he was, it almost seemed like Harry actually grew to like this woman, as his partner. And just to take the rocket launcher and blow up with the mayor still in the building, because they're in the guard tower. That's where they are. They're in Alcatraz. Yeah. So I always remember this movie. It's like, oh, this is the Alcatraz movie. That's all I remember. The rest of it is a snore to me.
Right. Because they don't bother making Alcatraz even significant other than, let's just film on Alcatraz because Alcatraz is closed and it's cool. It could be cool. They could have done it better. And there's some nice shots, but it's just, it's Alcatraz, for God's sake.
We've seen better movies with Alcatraz. We've seen The Rock. We've seen stuff like that. When you properly use the buildings, it's great. But we didn't get any of that, But yeah, this movie just did. There was parts of it was good, but there's a lot of it was bad. I'd say 75% of it was bad.
Yeah, there's a scene in there where it feels like, just like in the first two films, Harry's had partners that die, basically, or just don't work out. And of course, this is another one that dies in this film. And so he makes very clear points, especially with the whole interview angle about, well, hey, you got somebody that's in records. He asked what I thought was a pretty smart question. Well, what's your best felony arrest? Well, I don't have one. What's your best misdemeanor arrest? Well, I don't have any arrests. And the whole point that he's making for everybody is just how completely dumb and stupid it is, which is true. And it doesn't mean that he's, anti-feminist, because he sits there and he says, well, that puts the person in trouble, gets them shot, and their partner doesn't do anybody any good. And again, one of the things that they have in these movies, but they don't explore it because it's not that kind of movie, is just how incompetent government is when it comes to that, including the police. And then here you have City Hall being a part of it. And later on, when he gets suspended because he's like, screw this, I'm not going to go up there in a dog and pony show for the mayor about something because we put a bust on it. You guys made it seem like it was the real deal. That stuff still goes on today. When all of a sudden his partner, Tyne, her name's Moore in here, when she goes to kind of say, well, hey, if you need help, let me know. I'll help you out with records and stuff. I don't know if that's professional or not, but it's a certain amount of loyalty. But then they start talking immediately towards the end of this film. You're like, you're right. They walk in a very famous part about San Francisco. I forget the name of it. And she starts talking about things, and they're like flirting. And I'm like, I don't have a problem with a woman being strong about her likes and dislikes, but it just felt really forced to me. And I think she's such a great actress that I looked at this and went, God, couldn't they have just made her more? Because it made it seem like she was just chasing Harry. And Harry's supposed to be this lonely dude who, I'm not going to say he's, drinking a bottle of booze every night and crying.
Well, the last movie he got on with a girl.
He's not supposed to have a love interest, right?
The last movie he had got on with the neighbor girl.
Yeah,
he got on. But what they really dropped the ball is the fact they should have made her more challenging, more of a deal, for him to work with. They should have had more of a bickering attitude towards each other. Just hate each other, having forced to be work together. She doesn't like him because she calls him a pig, something like that. It would have been much more interesting, having a love-hate relationship, between the two partners. It would have made more sense even if you're going to have the flirting towards the end. Because the fact they just threw the flirting in there, it's like, wait, where'd that come from? It's like, wait. Oh, that's right, because Callahan, like, all women can't resist him, even his partners, because, and then she dies. It's like, well, he didn't even get a tap at it. She just died. It's like, what was the point of that? Like, if you're going to have flirting in there, Here, get some. Because if
Didn't
she
build her
dies, he's
or
not gonna
build him
care.
up at all.
Yeah, it's just a service to the character. Like, you know, whether they sleep together or not doesn't make a difference to me. It's the fact that I wanted her to be much of a pain in the butt to him, where they're forced, where he has to like basically put her in his place, put her in her place, you know, and like, you know, and just them constantly one upping each other would have been much more better, more entertaining, at least for me. But it just felt like, you know, okay, just throwing a woman in there, like it's like somebody had an idea. It's like, what if we throw a female in there? Because Harry hates females employees, but he likes sleeping with them, and now he can't. No, it's like,
Yeah,
it
it's
sounded
just that
stupid.
movie voiceover role guy that's like TV commercial guy that just makes you want to punch the screen over like that. And now Dirty Harry's getting ready to sleep with his own, it's like, come on, guys,
He's
stop
used
it.
to deal with guy partners. Now he's got a woman. What will he
Yeah.
do?
So I'm gonna segue here for a moment before we talk about another scene and another character. But this reminded me of a movie that would come out less than a year later, and that would be The Spy Who Loved Me with James Bond. And here on the Extreme Movie Show,
Mhm.
with Professor Pixel, we're going through the whole catalog and reviewing them. We're getting ready to do drop on Her Majesty's Secret Service over the next week. One of the better Bond films overall, in my opinion, I think. And in The Spy Who Loved Me, you have a very significant female role. It's Barbara Bach. She's playing Major Anya Amasova or Rova. It's an OVA, so that means it's Russian in nature, the ending
Yeah.
part of it, whatever. And she's very professional. She's very competent, but there's definitely a feminist element to it because the agent Triple X that's assigned to kill Bond at the beginning of the film is actually the guy, which is her lover. So she takes on the role, and a guy knows that she's going to do her best because it's a chance for her to work with Bond and maybe work him one over on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of both know it, and there's some great back and forth between it. But there's a particular scene when they're driving away from the henchman Jaws, where Bond starts making fun of her driving a car because she's putting in gear and grinding and this and that, and he just makes his few little quips. And so finally, she hits Jaws and smashes more like that. And she looks over at James and with a straight face delivers the line, shaken, not stirred. And he just kind of rolls his eyes for a second. And it's like, that's the kind of dynamic I wanted here in this film.
Yeah.
Because I think Tyne Daly is just fantastic. I think she's a great actress. I remember her in Cagney Lacey. She's done other stuff, but she does have a presence about her. She's very good. And I just wasn't feeling it. And it felt so forced. It's awful that what they did in here to both of them.
Yeah, she's got the tomboyish look, you know, like she grew up with brothers, you know, older brothers who picked on her, so she's
the girl down the street that you know.
She's the one they don't think can handle her own. But in this, it's making her feel like she's let's just give her a look, but then she's just all she is the damsel of distress, you know. She killed, like it was believable when she first killed the first person, you know, because she's personnel. She's worked for 9 years and never held or used a gun. Or I guess, so when she kills that girl, the nun, posing as a nun in the church, she's kind of realized what she's done. You know, she's taken a life. You know, and that is no matter who you are, a guy, you know, a girl. If you take a life, it kind of haunts you a little bit if you don't get over it. You don't accept what you did. It was, you know, you had no choice.
Right.
Yeah. So that was kind of realistic as far as, but. After that, though, you can see her getting even in the Alcatraz. You can see her like when she's around the corner. He's like, you know, he's like laughing at her. He's like, keep it up. She's like, I'll shoot you dead, and she does, you know. But for her to go out the way she did, it's like,
it was a punk move.
It was just dumb. It's like you built her up to be a character that you want us, you know, and no, we're just gonna kill her off. What was the point of it? At least, I mean, you didn't have to kill her. You could have had her, or at least, you know, like they both save the day, and then she ends up she deciding, no, you know what, this is too much for me. I'm going to retire. I'm going to transfer back for the personnel, and I just can't handle it. You know, that would have been more believable.
Yeah, and apparently there was supposed to be like maybe a trilogy of films, and of course there ended up being 5 of them. So maybe at the time this is a way for them to just kind of write it off and make it seem like they were going to have a happy ending. And I get it, that's fine. But I think a better way to have done this would have been, like you say, have a bit more of that Spy Who Loved Me back and forth in here. But then what you do is you have her live, but you have her be his boss in the next film.
You could do that too, yes.
Something like that, you know, not where she's going to go against type and all of a sudden feel too big for her britches or whatever, but let you could have showcased the fourth film basically being which would be Sudden Impact, where oh, by the way, she's your boss now, and now you can focus the film a bit on her about how difficult it is being a female in that particular role, dealing with certain things and understanding it from that point of view, plus
Right.
not having that and going, hey, you know what? I'm dealing with a lot of incompetent young men that are on the force now that aren't like, Dirty Harry. So how do we deal with all that? That would have been a great way, I think, in the 80s to really address that. But
Female captains,
yeah,
you
but
know,
I
sergeants,
mean, it's like they just want to check the box to get something going
Yeah,
on
that's all
here.
it was. It's just like, yeah, I just threw her in there like, okay, now she's dead. She had her 5 minutes. She was there to flirt with him a little bit, and then to motivate Harry to kill the bad guy. Harry would have killed him regardless.
It's the whole wrestling thing of getting your shit in without making the other guy looking good. It's just get it in because that's what you do. But I do want to talk about one character, the guy that's been in all 3 films so far that's taken it. So the do you feel lucky punk thing, the guy's like, come on, man, like, show me. I'm paraphrasing. He wanted to know whether or not Dirty actually had all the guns in his bullets. And Harry, had clicked it back in the first film, and he didn't, so he was bluffing. But he was that pimp in the last film that we said that was kind of graphic, pouring the bleach or drain cleaner or whatever down his girl's throat. That was uncalled for. And then here he's this militant. And what I like about here is the scene with these two talking, because it's like, hey, street recognizes street, great recognizes great, whatever you want to call it. So Harry goes onto their turf with her in tow, like you said, and she's, she does one over the brothers in the main room. That was her test. But he goes and talks with that, and it's a business transaction. He doesn't want to pop them, but he knows he can, so he leans on them. And I like when he was talking to him, he's lifting up, I think it was like an elephant and a couple other knickknack stuff, and he's like, well, if you don't give me what I want, I'm gonna have to call it robbery and send them all down. Or he's like, well, what are you talking about? I'm not running the scam. And he's like, well, this and that. And you're like, oh, I like that. That was cool. But there's this nice little bit of respect between them, even if it's a professional kind of flip side of the coin level of respect, which again was really lacking between him and Tyne Daly's character. But yet there's a couple more scenes where Big Ed Mustafa, excuse me, I want to make sure I have his name right, because he was the pimp in the last movie and he was just a thug in the first one. But here, Big Ed Mustafa steals it because he sits down and just the way he carries himself, he's just not an actor to go, well, let me steal the scene or let me just sit there and give the information and act like I'm not a part of it. He's there. You can feel his presence, and he would be like in the next film too. So I thought he stood out. I don't know why, other than his chemistry maybe, but there's just something neat about seeing Harry go undercover and know where to go and who to see. Because remember, with Big Ed, that's where he went undercover into the, what do we want to call this, shady massage parlor. And the adult movie industry run by a bunch of retirees doing a mail order scam to sell.
Yeah, it's each kissing, like, the lipstick kissing the old ladies kissing it's like, sending letters out. It's like, oh, I need money. Like, it's like,
it was neat because those things go on and they weren't afraid to show it. But it's not a part of it's not to make the film, but it's a part of what Dirty Harry, the character in this film, was around, and I like seeing that. That added a lot to it. I thought
it added more to the CD. It's a CD, parlor. Most massage parlors, a lot of time they had other things going on in the back, rooms, so they were always front sometimes. So I thought that was kind of neat that they threw that in there. The one thing that is, you're gonna laugh. This is what kind of a little thing that made me pop, because I don't really see this often. Is when he went to go get the beers and he hears like, oh, there's apple juice. He hands her, it's a glass bottle he's drinking from. Like, I don't see glass bottles anymore for apple juice sold really anymore. I'd have to really look for it.
But because I think for me, when you talk about Dirty Harry, I remember I'd seen big chunks of these films as a kid, but not knowing which one is which. And it wasn't until 1983 that I saw it and went, what the hell? And then at the time, my father was like, this is the same character in all those other films. And I was like, oh, and it made sense. But then when you go back and watch them in order, to comment on Maronya's point in chat, where she's saying basically you kind of keep the character the same, and that way it makes it easier for writers, and it makes it easier, I think, too, Maronya, for directors, because we know at this time Clint Eastwood basically it was his show, his highway, no matter who directed it or whatever. He had a big say in it. So I think you're
Yeah.
right. Because some people, like in Eyes Wide Shut, I always like to talk about how Tom Cruise might have been made to do a scene 100 times until they filmed it and felt like they got it right. Whereas here, for the most part, if they just hit their notes,
Yeah.
and even Dirty Harry, his character's not meant to talk a lot, and he did in this film. Um, Whatever was just good enough, they were going to go with, and it works. I mean, it's not a complaint. It's just an observation. It's hard to dislike a movie that may have more potential with it, because I don't know that you grade a film on potential, but sometimes it can just frustrate you. That's what I'm trying to share here. But I will say this: the movie's not long like the last one. It's like an hour and a half, like 95, 96 minutes. It does flow and it does move quick. Whereas I think the last one was a lot longer, a lot more drawn
Yeah.
out, a bit more intense. But this one was definitely, I think, a bit more like a light action film filler, if you will. What do you think?
Mhm. It didn't move by a little faster. I want to comment on what Marty's saying. The character is saying, well, yeah, every movie he's eating something. You notice that? He's going to grab a bite to eat
Hmm.
or a drink. So they're really keeping like his character pretty much the same, you know. So the first movie he has the hot dog, and then the second I forget what he had in the second movie, you know, but
The
yeah,
second one was, I think, when he was at the airstrip and he
yeah,
was having, I think, Coke and hamburgers with
yeah.
his partner.
So it's like so that's funny. Is they keep that small little thing, and he's constantly eating, no matter what film it is. I'm curious the next film we watch, is he going to be eating that one too? It's like we always joke about Mariko Tamaki, a comic book character writer, you know, for DC. Whenever she writes a book, the character's always eating something. It's like something she puts in there. Like I don't know
I
why,
have
but
heard of some actors saying that, "Oh, I want to be eating like a banana or a piece of fruit or drinking something in the scene because it gives them something to do and they can work it into their character."
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, how does that advance the character? I don't know.
Well, if it's girly in a banana, you know, that's going to take away from what the rest of us when we're watching the movie.
I know.
So they probably don't do that as much. But like I said, and it's like, you know, it's something you see, like, and it's a running gag. You know, like cops are always getting like they're going to diner, getting their donuts or coffee.
Hmm.
You know, here he's grabbing a beer. You notice that he's like, coffee. I want a coffee. I got a beer here. He's drinking out of a mug right there. He's, you know, especially in this movie. So I like that, you know. But yeah, they did because he's a girl, so like, oh, they don't have any beer, so they went for the cutesy, like the juice box, you know, the juice, apple juice.
Just yeah. Let's talk about one aspect that we didn't bring up yet, and I think there's a good reason for it, because there's not much of it, and what's in here is not very good, except for one thing, and that's the action scenes.
No, they're
Yeah, we
short,
talked about the car being driven in, which sounds great, but for me, I felt underwhelmed. But the foot chase, I like that. Where they're jumping over the buildings, and Harry and her are running, chasing. He's taking one pass, she's taking another, and it was extended. And it was a little jazzy. That's when I went, wait a minute, and I looked it up. Leo Schifrin, who I guess did all the soundtracks, did not do this one for whatever reason. So it's definitely a different thing, and I feel like that's missing, because there's something on the edge of that funk
right?
jazz music thing in the 70s that the first two films had that this doesn't have, except for this foot chase scene. As soon as that started happening, I went, oh, this feels like a Dirty Harry film. It wouldn't be great unless you had some funky jazz sort of thing playing and them running around, and you get to see the streets and everybody around them. I
It's like
miss
TJ.
those kind of
It's
scenes.
like TJ Hooker. You get that theme song playing whenever they're running or driving.
And rolling.
Starsky and Hutch, same thing. And it's like there's always a certain like a song they play, like, you know, when they're running. It's you watch at first you don't notice it until you start watching every episode. You're like, wait, it's the same song again. It's common for most places, you know, most shows, because even cartoons, whenever there's a certain action scene, they play like the title theme, you know.
Yep.
So James Bond's done that too, multiple times. You
Well,
know.
the one thing I wanted to point out too is there's a point towards the end here in the third act where on Alcatraz there's a few scenes that were being shot, and I'm listening to it, and of course you hear the different bits and pieces of music they either add, take away, or whatever you may feel about soundtracks and scores. And I thought I felt there a few times in this film a little bit of a synthesizer passage here and there, and I bring that up because in '76 a synthesizer had not been around very long, and in its very early stages. I think the first recorded version is like an Emerson, Lake and Palmer song, which means nothing to you, being the middle-aged
Mhm.
30-something kind of guy that you are, and definitely not to our millennial man, Professor Pixel, in his early 20s. But the Emerson ELP fans like myself know who I'm talking about. And I went, wow, the soundtrack has really just changed, because San Francisco, you think it was being hip, you know. What we had a pimp in the last film. We had
Yeah, the
we had
slang
the
they're using.
fashion district in the first one.
They
Here we've
call it
got City Hall, and we've got the porno industry, and I'm like, well, where's the hipness to it? A synthesizer's not hip.
well. You hear the lingo
It's
they're
more
using.
80ish, and
They're using slang. They call them jive. You know, again. I think that's during the
yeah,
scene. So there's a little dialogue. It seems 70s
it
slang.
is.
You
It
know,
is.
and I don't mind that, because like when I think about 70s when it comes to like, you know, shoot 'em movies, I always go for like, oh, where's the cheesy slang they're gonna use? Like, oh, they call him a giant turkey. What the heck? It's just like it's always the black guy that's saying it. It's like that. It seems weird whenever you get a movie and it's a white guy calling him like, hey, you jive turkey. It's like, what? Because it's we've been trained as for Hollywood. Like, that's not normally the person color, you know, that who says that. So it's weird how they give like certain characters, people, this stereotypes in the movies.
Yeah.
And this one switched it up a little bit, though. So like I said, that was the exception, I guess, because they decided to have the guys who were holding up the store and call him a giant turkey or something like that. No,
Yeah, this was, I
it
think,
was,
definitely a wittier film,
yeah,
but I think the action was a little bit lacking, and it wasn't as tense, I think, as the first two. Not to say it's bad, but
no.
the okay, we'll have a militant group hijack some stuff, hardly show them at all.
You
I
know what
mean,
this?
it just felt flat.
Do you know what you remind me of? It's like I don't think it had come out yet, but Cobra. Remember they had the anarchists with and then they were just going around killing people. Like,
But by the 80s, it had gotten so in fashion to have your A-team scene where you're gearing up,
yeah,
not to be confused by people that think they know 80s films. The gearing up scene, the A-team scene, as I've defined it, and I defined it back when the A-team debuted, so I have a trademark on that for 40 plus years. The A-team scene is not to be confused with the montage, which we all celebrate as a music thing, and people
mm-hmm.
looking and doubting themselves as they look in mirrors and have flashbacks. That's,
Yeah.
that alone is a successful formula for 1980s film watching. But that, to your point, really did not exist. But one of the reasons we wanted to do the Dirty Harry films is to kind of go back to what Morano mentioned before, with the character basically being a simple template. The movie is as well. We're going to have our opening gambit that sets up the bad guy. We're going to have our action scene that involves Scary. He's going to be eating something. He's going to get a partner that's probably going to die. We're going to have this African-American gentleman here, whether he's a badass pimp or Big Ed Mustafa, a militant guy. I don't know what he's going to be, but I think in the fourth film, spoiler alert,
like I
he's
said,
going
you're going to have him eating. You're going to have him firing his 44 cannons. Someone's going to comment on it.
Yeah.
There's a third film. Someone's commented on his gun. So they're always talking up the gun. You notice that? Because, well, you got to sell the gun. You know, they could have just fire it, you know, but they really want to sell it. So they talk about, you know, what caliber it is, you know, and like how she calls it a cannon. You know, you're just really selling up the gun. And Death Wish should be coming out, 3 should be coming out like a couple years from this.
Well, Death Wish had already been out, and
yeah.
so that one, which I believe we've gone ahead and covered, is like, you saw a guy that his character, played by Charles Bronson, is actually a liberal, and not making fun of him, calling him a bedwetting liberal, like
No.
I'm pounding on it. It's
He's
just in the film he's talking to a guy because he's an architect, and
Mhm.
they talk about that sort of stuff, and he says he's a liberal, and the guy who's his buddy basically is like, well, hey, I have a gun here, and he doesn't know anything about it. And I think that's a really interesting scene, because now if you put something like that in film in today's world, people would be triggered that somebody's a liberal and somebody who's not a liberal talking about a gun and what it can and can't do for you. So back then it was more about the progressive nature that people will argue, for better for worse, now is the way things are. But Death Wish had already been out, so some people are going, these films are too violent, and they glamorize the gun and the violence with it, and those people are not the conservative types.
You're going to notice, though, as these movies go on, I think it's the next one he gets gets the automatic Magnum.
Well, next Sunday when we talk about Sudden Impact 1983, I think it's Sandra Locke. We'll be taking a look at that, and it's an interesting thing because 7-8 years it will have passed before we see this character again. So we're going to see how much of it out of this template they keep in mind. How much of
Yeah.
it do they bring in the early 1980s into it, where it's changed from the 70s? Do they have a militant black guy? Do they have a pimp in there? Do they have a
Yes.
porno industry? What do they have in there? And I think
Yes.
it's going to focus more on feminist issues, which isn't a bad thing.
I think that's the one where the sister is getting revenge because this group of people killed her sister.
And it's not going to be pleasant. And it's a
So
revenge film.
if I recall correctly, that's what it is. I think I like that one better than this one because that one was much more. I guess it was different, but it wasn't. It didn't feel forced. Like this felt forced on this character.
Well, that's why this movie is called The Enforced.
Yeah.
That's not The Enforced. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. Any last thoughts about the movie? Anything you wanted to point out?
If you've never watched these movies, go ahead and watch them. If you're a fan of guns, man, if you really like 44 Magnum, that's to take down the freaking elephants, So, yeah. But my only thing is man, if this would have been made a little bit later, if they actually would have used in the 80s instead of using the paint blood, they would have used actual they did in the horror movies. When you're impaled, it's not bright neon paint, because those 44 Magnums put a big hole in you if they go through you. So that's the only thing I my critique for this moment overall. They should have done actual more realistic, blood packets, not these bright things.
And just remember the guy who gets shot through the backside and it comes out his front side in the nether regions. That's actually shown here, even though it's in jeans. I went, did they just not edit this and just say, well, this is good enough? He gets shot in the butt, but we'll show the paint in the front. Yeah, whatever. The violence should be better in the next film. I will agree with you on that.
The opening sequence from this movie always makes me laugh too because how stupid it is. The girl's hitchhiking again, here comes the good guy. It's it's they chose a nice night to go hitchhiking, and she kind of seduced them. It's here, my place is just up the road. 2 guys and they work for the gas company or something or whatever they work, and so you're and she's I got some cool beers up there, and it's and then these guys are dead. So I knew right away. They give her a ride. They go here, pull this where it says "Do not enter." Turn here where it says "Do not enter." Small little cabin in the woods. I'm guess what? Her boyfriend's gonna come out because I've seen people. This is a real life scam. People have done this. Actually murdered someone. I've seen.
Hitchhiking was the thing for a very long
time.
Well,
not hitchhiking. Is this that you got the girl who says can you give me a ride place? And then the guy gets attacked and killed by her partner, her lover, her boyfriend. It's a scam. It's a common scam.
It's a honeypot. It's the oldest scam there is.
So I love that they do it in there, and then also they threw in. They said the whole scam, the money scam, with the latest gets in the envelope. So I love they threw it in there because that stuff still goes on today. So it's something. It's not like it's made up for. It's make believe. It doesn't happen in Hollywood. No, it does happen. So that was kind of funny. They threw it in there because I wasn't expecting that. So I guess that's how they get access to Alcatraz or something like that through those 2 guys or something. I can't remember what the whole point of it was, but
they just wanted to get rich and they stole some weapons to rob some people.
Yeah.
So they kidnapped him for ransom and drove to Alcatraz.
And Harry's still a dick to his I guess was his partner. He's when he's like, you want help go in there? He's like, no, you just slow me down, fatso. so
he's such a charmer,
right? He says that he's the guy who says that. It's what a nice.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Enforcer, 1976, Clint Eastwood, Tyne Daly. Check it out. Watch them in order if you haven't. It helps. You don't have to though. That is one neat thing about it, but it definitely adds a bit more punch to it, if you will. We're going to definitely take care of the next 2 films over the next couple weeks. We're going to try to throw in a few things here over the Thanksgiving holidays. I believe a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving may be coming up as well. Maybe even Thanksgiving if we're really feeling it. And the sequel. We'll see if we have any takers for that one there too. I'd like to thank Rania and everybody else showing up here on the Xtreme Movie Show chat live as we go over these films here. Tuesday night we'll be dropping live as well. Movie to be determined. We've got a short list down of a few. If you have any, please let us know, especially as we get towards the end of the year and the holiday season, we definitely want to cover some of the films that people are very interested in too. So RDV, I want to say thanks for showing up as usual. I want to thank everybody that's involved here at the Extreme Movie Show. Everybody for listening. Thank you for getting the word out. Have a good night. And as always, stay extreme.
Later.